Hey y'all, I'm Hope, and today I want to talk about my most anticipated releases for the latter half of the year. I haven't previously made a most anticipated video because I tend to make a list that's a little bit overwhelming, but this year I did a much better job of kind of culling through and figuring out what I was most excited for, and I thought it would be fun to share these books with you in case they're things that aren't already on your radar that you might want to pick up when they come out later this year. So, it's currently June 4th, so we're pretty early in June, and I am going to mention a couple of books coming out this month, just because they're ones that I'm particularly excited about, and then we'll move on from there. But coming out on June 20th, there are two books. First one is The Only One Left by Riley Sager, which is a Lizzie Borden meets Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo kind of a thing, from what I've heard. I actually haven't read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but it seems to have a similar setup, where there is a person who is offering their life story but only to one other person. And this one follows a young woman who was many years ago accused of a Lizzie Borden-style massacre, and she's since become a recluse and kind of remains hidden in her house. And then many years later, she's an older lady, she can only communicate via typewriter, and she gets a new caretaker and offers that caretaker her life story. So I think it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think I have kind of a controversial opinion on Riley Sager's most recent book, because I actually really liked The House Across the Lake. So I'm pretty excited about this one, because I'm hoping that I'm going to continue liking his books going forward. On the same day, we're also getting You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kalynn Bayron, who I've not read from before, but this one is a Friday the 13th-esque YA slasher. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. This one follows a young woman who is the designated final girl in a full contact horror experience at a summer camp. And at the end of the summer, some of her coworkers begin to go missing, and she finds herself in a situation where she has to be a final girl for real. And that just sounds like so much fun. I love anything Friday the 13th inspired, and I'm pretty excited for this one. And I think it's going to be a really fun one for this summer, especially because Summerween is coming up in July, so it's going to be like perfect timing for that. So then moving into July, on the 1st, Jade Shards by Fonda Lee is coming out, and this one is a series of short stories that are all connected to the Green Moon Saga universe, and I'm really excited for this because I really like Jade City, and I'm working my way through the series at the moment, so I'm excited to have like some short stories to come back to later once I've gotten through the rest of the series. Then on July 18th, we're getting Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, which is one I've been particularly excited about, and I'm actually currently reading an arc for this book, and at this point would highly recommend it. This is a horror book about a young woman and her best friend who, they're both interested in films. She's a sound engineer, he's an actor, and they end up meeting a kind of cult classic horror director who they remember watching in their childhood and finding out that he has a cursed film and he wants their help completing it. If you liked Mexican Gothic, you'll probably like this one as well. It has that kind of similar tense build-up that Mexican Gothic has. Now I will say I think this one is much slower. I think this is much more going to appeal to people who are very character-driven, who like a lot of tension building and just that kind of slower creeping dread, because this book takes a long time to build up to its story. There's a lot of character work, there is a lot of history that it's trying to give you so that you kind of understand what's going on, and for me it's really working, but it's definitely going to appeal more to a character-driven, slow-paced reader. Also on July 18th, The Jasad Heir by Sarah Hashem is coming out, and this one is the beginning of, I believe, a duology. It's Egyptian-inspired fantasy, and this one is following an exiled queen who has to team up with her enemy in order to get involved in some sort of game. I don't really know a whole lot about this one, but I've been seeing some arcs go out, so I'm curious to see what the early reviews are going to be like, but I think this one sounded like it was going to be fun, and I know that there is an enemies to lovers romance in it as well. Moving into August, on the 8th, Masters of Death by Olivia Blake comes out, and this one I'm really curious about because I haven't read anything by Olivia Blake, but I know The Atlas Six and Alone with You in the Ether have been very popular lately, and I have The Atlas Six on my shelf actually, but I haven't read it yet. But The Masters of Death has a premise I think sounds very cool. This one is about a vampire real estate agent who is trying to sell a haunted house and ends up having to team up with a medium who is also the godson of death to try and deal with the whole haunted mansion situation. Then at the end of August, on the 22nd, we're getting He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan, which is the sequel to She Who Became the Sun, which is a book I'm currently reading and loving. I can already tell it's going to be a new favorite for me, and I'm very excited about the sequel coming out later this year, because I believe it follows a different character, and is a character I really like in the first book. So I'm excited to see how the world of this story is going to open up with that new perspective. Then on the 29th of August, there are 2 books coming out. First is The Phoenix King by Aparna Verna, which is another one I don't know a whole lot about, but I know that there is something to do with a phoenix god, there's fire magic, and there's an ancient prophecy that entangles an assassin, a princess, and a king, and they have to make some difficult decisions that may or may not destroy the world. Then the other one coming out that day is Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas, which is about some sort of encounter between vampires and ranchers in Mexico, and that just sounds really fun to me. I did read part of The Hacienda. I haven't finished it yet. This is a trend you will notice with me as I read like half of a book and then I walk away from it. But I was really liking the atmosphere in The Hacienda, so I'm really curious to see what she's going to do with a vampire story. Then moving into September, on the 5th, City of Bones by Martha Wells. This is a reprint, I believe, of one of her earlier books, and I don't know anything about this one, but I have enjoyed a lot of other things by Martha Wells, so I'm very excited for it anyway. On the 12th of September, there are 2 books coming out that I am particularly excited for. The first one is Mammoths at the Gates, which is the 4th Singing Hills Cycle book. I've been enjoying the series. Every year I pre-order it and then I read it on the day that it comes out, and it's a fun little novella series about storytelling and about history and who gets to tell stories, and I just really enjoy all of the different ways that Neve Vo uses that premise, and so I'm really excited to get this one and devour it immediately, as I do every year. And then the other one coming out that day is The Death I Gave Him by M.X. Liu, which is a queer sci-fi retelling of Hamlet that is also a locked room thriller. And that's just a bunch of words together that I really like, because Hamlet is my favorite Shakespeare play that I've read so far. Haven't read a lot of Shakespeare, but I do love Hamlet. I love locked room mysteries, that's one of my favorite things. So I'm really interested to see how this author is going to mix those elements together. Then on the 19th of September, there are again 2 books. First is Untamed Shore by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, which is another reprint of an older book. I believe this one is a noir story about a young woman who gets involved or entangled with some strange people, some mysterious strangers on a beach. I don't know anything else beyond that, but I love everything I've read from Sylvia Moreno Garcia, so I'm going to pick it up anyway. And then the other one is Starter Villain by John Scalzi, which is about a young man who inherits his uncle's supervillain business and has to deal with all of the chaos that entails. And it just sounds like it's going to be fun. Just plain fun. Then on the 26th of September, A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faizal, which I believe is a heist story involving vampires, which sounds like fun. Then we get into October, and I just have a couple of books for that month. First up is A Fireborn of Exile by Alia David Dard on October 12th. This is a queer sci-fi retelling of The Count of Monte Cristo. I have not read The Count of Monte Cristo, but this one just seems like it's going to be, again, fun. And I would like to read The Count of Monte Cristo before this book comes out, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Regardless, I'm going to be picking this one up because I love everything I've ever read from Alia David Dard. I just love her characters and the way that she writes her sci-fi worlds, so it's going to be good regardless. And then the other book for October is coming out on the 17th. And that one is All These Sunken Souls, which is a short story anthology of YA horror that's being edited by Circe Moskowitz. Then we're getting into November, and these are the last few books I have to mention. So on the 7th, there are 2 books coming out. The first is A Power Unbound by Freya Marsk. This is the 3rd book in the Last Binding trilogy. The first book in the series is one of my all-time favorites. I still need to read the second book, but I am really excited for the 3rd book because it's centering on a character who is in the first book, and he's kind of a jerk in the first book. So I'm curious to see how Freya Marsk is going to bring me around to liking this character, or at the very least empathizing with him, because he really is a jerk in the first book. So I'm interested to see how that's going to go. And again, I love the first book a lot, and I'm certain I'm going to love the second one as well. A friend of mine read it and loved it, so I'm feeling good about that, and I'm excited to see how the trilogy is going to wrap up. The other book coming out on the 7th is Travis Baldrey's Bookshops and Bone Dust, which is the sequel to Legends and Lattes. Another book I have not read, but I've heard so many good things about it. I'm really looking forward to it, and I want to mention this just in case anybody has missed that this one is coming out, because it sounds like it's going to be another really fun one, very cozy story about the main character of Legends and Lattes, I think, prior to this book. I think it's set several years before. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting to see a different point in time for this character. And then lastly, I want to mention System Collapse by Martha Wells, which is coming out on the 14th of November, which is the 7th Murderbot book. I don't know what the plot of this one is going to be, but I do know it's going to be a full novel. And to be honest, I don't really care what the plot is going to be because I just love Murderbot and I'm excited to see what their next adventure is going to be. So those are all of the books that I am really anticipating in the latter half of the year. I don't know what that gesture I just did was, but my arm did not like it. I've been knitting for the last little while, and apparently my muscles in my arm are tired. Anyway, those are the books I'm most anticipating for the latter half of the year. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and hopefully you found something to look forward to be excited for coming up in the next few months. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope that you've liked this video, and if you have, I hope you consider giving a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there is more content coming soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!